We're back. That's right. Metropolitan and Economic Development Committee. I know. Finally, huh? This is something I've been looking forward to for a little while. They're going to be talking about the Downtown Economic Enhancement District. Just to give a quick recap, a couple of years ago when all those ARPA dollars were going through Indianapolis, the great people of downtown Indy, uh, we won't get into them. They started this whole thing over in downtown where they're cleaning up bum poop mostly, and then they had these ambassadors, where it's basically a bunch of old people that were walking around asking people if they needed help, but their shift stopped at like 4 o'clock. I think they were only there for like maybe 5 or 6 hours. So a year or two ago, the General Assembly put out this whole district. They called the EED, which was the Economic Enhancement District, and how they would fund this whole thing. They wanted to keep it going, but how they would fund it is that they would charge renters, charge all these buildings, the businesses, and the residential. It'd basically be a tax. They called it like a fine. Then the General Assembly came back, and then they limited it, and it had to be a voluntary program. So, and I said this from the beginning: if you were a renter in that district, you were going to be paying more because that building was going to actually have to pay into it. What we ended up finding out was that downtown Indy got, I think, if I remember right, it was either $500,000 or $1.5 million for administration costs to figure out this whole economic district. But now, proposal number 50 of 2025 approves the budget. And I saw the PDF of it the other day, and I was like, got to do this video. I just got back from the Wayne Township trustee, the advisory board meeting, so I knew I wanted to get this video out tonight. Don't worry, boys and girls. We're going to be talking about bump poop. So let's just get into it.
Those opposed, same sign.
We're skipping ahead a little bit.
The next item on our agenda is proposal number 50, approves the 2025 budget of the Downtown Economic Enhancement District. Ms. Taylor Schaefer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This evening, you have in front of you a proposal for 6 months of the Downtown Indianapolis Economic Enhancement District. I keep joking that we are so close to a place where when I come and talk to you all, it'll be about the impacts and results of the district and not just getting it set up.
Also, I will put the PDF in the description below.
But for the sake of one more time of getting things set up, I just wanted to walk through really quickly a refresher on the district about how we got here, who this impacts, and what this will look like in this first year of district operations. As a really quick reminder, the General Assembly initially created the EED during the 2023 session. There were additional tweaks made to that legislation in 2024 and enacted by you all and the City County Council last year. The tool was specific for downtown Indianapolis, although the process that I'm going through tonight will look really similar to what you see annually from the Woodruff Place EID and the Virginia Avenue EID. This tool, though, was intended to address two pressing issues. Federal dollars that were currently supporting enhanced downtown operations were running out, and the need for additional new dollars to support long-term operations of a housing hub and low-barrier shelter.
Basically, the gravy train was about to end, and downtown Indy wanted some of that money, and I'm sure they're getting some kind of administration costs. And of course, you know, Republicans do not want to reply back to me of how much downtown Indy is getting. Basically, the Republicans of Marion County have given me the finger, and they don't like to reply back anymore.
The board, as constituted under state law, is made up of 9 members. 2 were appointed by you all on the City County Council, 1 appointed by the mayor, 1 from the House, 1 from the Senate, and 4 appointed by the governor. We're joined by 2 here this evening, our chair, Bill Brown, and our vice chair, Greg Henneke. Those dollars could be permitted uses under the state law included security, which could be both for manpower but also for public safety technology, utilization of safety ambassadors, non-law enforcement presence in downtown, cleaning, litter, graffiti removal, power washing, outreach to those experiencing homelessness, operations for a low barrier shelter, landscaping and beautification, and supporting business development. Just as a refresher, this is the ultimate EED boundary that you all enacted into law last fall. That is a little bit different than the initial mile square footprint. We're looking at it today with our operations team. The northern boundary is the highway The eastern boundary is the highway. The southern boundary is still South Street, so as to not overlap with that existing district on Virginia Avenue. And the one on the west side is approximately Blackford Street. That is equidistant on each side. It is not bisecting any existing district. If you'll recall, that was a topic of conversation with the initial mile square. It's about 3 blocks further up to the north and about 2 blocks on either side. Again, these were things that were approved last fall, but as a grounding.
There we go. See, hold on, wait. I got to hold on, wait. Boop. Okay, now you see what's going on here. EED total from each person. They're calling it a fee. All right, that's fine. I call it a tax. Whatever, it doesn't matter. And they're showing it like general commercial, office, hotel, commercial parking, other apartments. I mean, holy. They're saying it's like, oh, it's only $0.21 million. Yeah, but you know that the apartment the people who own the building are not going to be eating all that. It's going to get transferred over to the renters. This was interesting. The hotels too. So that means the cost of a hotel room will go up too. That means everything goes up. So if you're in like a commercial building, you're selling retail, you automatically have to, your rent is going to go up. So that means everything else goes up. This is how short-sighted all these people are, because they're a bunch of vultures, a bunch of snakes, and all they give a shit is their almighty God, the dollar.
Exercise. That fee, the rate for the fee is 0.1681% of gross assessed value on really all commercial properties. Residential units and apartment units were removed from the legislation in 2024. You do still see some dollars from apartments. That is removing that cap 2 AV, but including those that have mixed use in that development. So they're still paying for that mixed use square footage within their property. For this year, our total budget based on that assessment is about $4.53 million, which is what we'll be talking about this evening.
Unbelievable.
Some overarching goals from community listening sessions, from our public hearing last week, from conversations with the board and stakeholders, really wanting to prioritize increased safety and perceptions of safety downtown.
Hey, did you hear that though? Did you hear that? Perception of safety, because we know, hey, I was just down there not long ago. Actually, I was down there last night. I saw a bum taking a dump. True story. What was it? New Jersey and Ohio. I saw this dude just like, I thought he was high. You know, when you see the zombies in like Philadelphia, that's what he looked like. And he was just taking a dump in front of three other bumps. Not joking, by the way. The perception of safety, though. Hey, you know, I just want to make sure I don't have to walk over bum poop.
Ensuring that it's a clean, inviting, and cared-for downtown experience. The third one says a lot of words, but really speaks to the fact that we need a 365-day-a-year downtown. That it's great and necessary for our crews to be working really hard ahead of big events, but that's also has to be true on a Monday or a Tuesday or a Wednesday when there isn't a big event or convention in town. Downtown's vibrancy requires a livable downtown 365 days a year, and we achieve that through proactive place management and a high level of direct engagement and responsiveness.
Hey, bums, can you like not sit there? Because we're trying to make some money, and we got to get you out of the way. It's not looking very pretty over here.
So what does that mean? What will those dollars do?
Yeah.
Utilizing a mix of full-time downtown Indy employees.
All I see is Jose over here painting something yellow.
And contractors to provide 7-day-a-week cleaning services throughout that district footprint. We will deploy crews by quadrant with a focus on high-traffic areas and commercial corridors. You can see on the map that maps really nicely to those entities that are paying in. We understand that a full downtown experience requires everything to look and feel good, but we also really want to prioritize that those that are paying into the district, how they're receiving services.
God, it is an awful paint job right there. It must be one of those H-1B.
We're leveraging the CSAY app to track and respond to property owner requests. We'll get to this in a second, but during this process of setting up the district, we sent out about 806 individual letters to every single parcel that'll be paying in. That included the legal language that is required to set up the district, but it also included my cell phone number. It included an email address where people could reach out with questions, comments, and concerns, and it included instructions for downloading the CSA app, so that much like similar to the Mayor's Action Center, people can take pictures, they can send in requests, they can do that from their phone. We receive it. We have about a 24 to 36 hour response rate for being able to address those challenges downtown. We're also prioritizing litter pickup, graffiti removal, power washing, and weed remediation. In the public safety bucket, those dollars will fund consistent off-duty bike patrols with focus on high traffic times and high visibility areas. We've worked really closely with IMPD and with those off-duty officers to not just be reactive, although sometimes we have to be, but really to be proactive, to be able to schedule out over weeks, to be able to identify where areas of our city are seeing, where areas of our downtown are seeing challenges, and then being able to move those resources around to be able to be really responsive to property owner issues. Continuing our safety ambassador program, that is something that originally came together in partnership with the city during the pandemic.
B-Link is only for businesses, though. And I remember seeing this guy. This guy got interviewed, and I think he only works till like 3 or 4 o'clock, because apparently that's when crime stops.
You see Scotty there on the screen. Those are law enforcement, non-sworn officers that really help to serve as both a friendly face, but also additional eyes and ears for public safety. They can also be a conduit and a partner to ensure that people have a really great experience downtown. We see future opportunities to invest in public safety technology, but as you'll see in this first 6 months of budgeted dollars, that we've really prioritized continuity and consistency of existing services and wanting to ensure that we're being conservative in our spending. The last category is that homeless outreach. We have, over the last two and a half years, worked in partnership with Horizon House to provide those outreach services. While Downtown Indy is named in state law as the staffing partner for the EED, and while we care very much about the impacts of homelessness and those neighbors that call downtown home, we also understand that at the end of the day, we're a membership-based, business-focused organization, and being service providers isn't what we do. So early on, contracted with Horizon House to be able to provide that outreach. That includes a community outreach coordinator and 5 full-time outreach workers. We've also added additional hours for IMPD's homeless unit staff and blended street outreach team. Those are really above and beyond normal staffing hours to provide support, to provide coordination, to provide additional collaboration specifically in that downtown area with these outreach workers. We also know that there will be future funding for that low barrier shelter, but due to the fact that the shelter is not yet up and running, that is not included in that first 6 months of funding.
Also, that shelter, it hasn't even broke down or broke ground yet. So it could take another probably 2 to 3 years, maybe even longer. I think the whole thing is a giant scam, personally. But
how do we know what this looks like? What does the ramp-up period look like? How did we prioritize these numbers? How did we attempt to budget for these numbers? Well, from January 2023 through all the way through June of 2025, we've been leveraging one-time American Rescue Plan dollars to really be able to pilot and maneuver these services. The items like we just talked about with the additional hours of IMPD's homeless unit, those type of additions were really lessons learned over the last 2.5 years that have allowed us to better understand what 7-day-a-week operations look like in downtown.
That means it is so bad. It's so awful in downtown that they need 24/7 surveillance. I mean, just get ready for downtown Indy to have just cameras everywhere pointing. Security state, all because Democrats are dipshits. They voted for Ryan Mears, they voted for Hogsett, and a bunch of ass clowns that do not care about public safety. I mean, even to the point where Ryan Mears was trying to put 2 IMPD cops in jail. And this guy is going to be the next mayor of Indianapolis? Really?
Key dates to better understand where we are in this process. As dictated by state law, the board itself was not
Damn, Taylor Schaefer gets paid $220,000 a year. So the woman speaking right now, right there. Oh, crap. Taylor Schaefer. Oh, let me make sure I'm blocking it right there. Is getting paid $220,000 a year. I think she used to work for the city. So let me double
until
check.
January 1 of this year. So on January 3rd, our board met for the very first time. They approved bylaws. They approved the assessment formulation. They did an analysis of the expenditures that you're talking about this evening, and then moved forward with the public hearing on January 31st, as I mentioned.
Yeah, right there. Boom diggity. Chief of staff in 21, making 125 a year. I think I even made a joke about it at the time. Same thing that happened to that land whale that moved over to the airport authority. Like, they just switched jobs to make more money. That was literally all they did it for. These people aren't believers. They just want the money.
806 pieces of mail went out in between those two dates, as outlined in state law. That allowed people to both come participate in the public hearing, but also get connected to us for more information and to be able to answer their questions. The January 31st meeting, we probably had 20 or so people attend. We had about 6 or 8, I think, in total that testified. Many had questions. Many wanted to learn more about how they could connect to city services, how they could connect to EED services, how they would see this appear on their property tax bill, how those things would work, and we were able to provide that information. Then, obviously, this was introduced to the City Council on last Monday. We're here before you today at MEDIC. Then, hopefully, if you all see fit, it will be approved by the Council on March 3rd, because we owe it to the Treasurer's Office and the Assessor's Office the following week, that approval, in order for it to be the assessment to be added to tax statements March 15th. We'll have another EED board meeting on April 11th. I share that in large part so that if anyone watching, that will really be informatory. We will do a deep dive on goals and priorities for this first year of the EED. We'll do a deep dive in inviting some folks associated with the low barrier shelter in to talk about what the timeline and operations for that will look like. It will really be an opportunity to explore how the EED will work over its 10-year period. And then June of 2025 is when that initial disbursement of funds will flow from the Treasurer's Office. As I mentioned, that's really important because that's the same timing that our current federal funds wrap up, and we want to ensure that there's not a dip in services, that there's not a drop-off in services.
I think there's something kind of important that we have to talk about, though. They talked about the low barrier shelter. First off, this is exactly how Homeless Inc. works, all right? You just got to keep dumping more money into it. And what's going to happen with this whole EED thing? We all know, because they're just going to keep raising the fines, raising the fees, which just means that taxes are going to be trickled down into the renters, into the homeowners, into the business owners. And then we're just going to have to pay, well, you guys are going to have to pay more money to clean up bum poop and make sure that these homeless people are kind of in their own little playpen, which, maybe it's not a bad idea. And I'd be very surprised if the homeless shelter will be actually completed by whatever time next year. It'll probably be more like 2027.
Other considerations before I wrap up that help to shape the financial document that you see in front of you. As I mentioned, really wanting to ensure that we are providing continuity for existing popular street-level operational services. We believe over the life of the district that there will be future opportunities to invest in things like public safety technology, like infrastructure, not in terms of roads and streets, but in terms of the equipment that makes power washing possible, that makes graffiti removal possible. Those type of things that will really help us to do our job here in downtown. We want to be able to plan for those, but for this first 6 months, ensuring that clean transition and continuity of service was really the top priority. We at Downtown Indy want to ensure that we're utilizing every dollar of federal funds that was granted to us by you all in the city of Indianapolis before that grant period expires, and then make for a smooth transition to those district operational funds. Another thing that's important to note, If I go back to that slide that provided to us by Policy Analytics, you'll recall that that total budget amount was about $4.53 million. It's important to note that our spending will actually happen 6 months in arrears. So you all are reviewing a budget for July 1 through December 31st. The other dollars that you see held at the end is because those will go into next year's expenditures. We will come back to you in November, just with our other districts, to be able to talk about next year's budget. It's a weird quirk for this first year of ensuring that all of these moving pieces work and that the timelines are aligned. Moving forward, we'll be on an annual basis just like the other districts. We also wanted to ensure that our spending is conservative for year one until we can have a better understanding of possible variables, and knowing that the low barrier shelter will open in late 2026. All things that we've talked about in a lot of detail as we're planning for not just this 6 months, but 18 months and 24 months into the future, how we're thinking about our spending moving forward.
They're just going to waste it all. We know that. And by the way, I think it's noteworthy is that Taylor Schaefer makes like 220 grand, if I remember right. Where is it? Yeah, right there. Taylor Schaefer, CEO, making 220 grand. When she was working for the city, she was making like 125 grand. And you know what? Everybody could say, oh, it's not about the money. It's not about the money. It's 100% about the money. That's why Morgan Mickelson left to go work at the Indianapolis or in the airport authority, I believe. They're frauds. Taylor, Morgan, they're all frauds. It has 100% to do with money. Don't let them lie to you.
With that, Madam Chairwoman, I am happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you for your presentation. I do believe we have an amendment for your proposal. Councilor Jones.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to amend Section 1 of Proposal Number 50, 2025 by adding the language underlined and replacing Exhibit A with revised Exhibit A attached herein. Section 1 pursuant to IC 36-7-40-7A and Section 121-1105 of the Revised Code of the Consolidated City and County, the Downtown Economic Enhancement District Board has submitted its proposed budget for calendar year 2025. The proposed budget is attached hereto and made a part hereof, marked as revised, highlighted, and underlined. Exhibit A, the total proposed budget is $4,530,000, and I so move.
The motion has been properly moved in second. Comments regarding the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed, same sign. The motion carries. Questions regarding the proposal as amended? Councilor Barth.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You referenced this, I want to make sure I'm tracking it. As far as the COVID relief dollars, can you help me just with the timing of those? That's expiring. You have enough to get through this dollars kicking in. Just help me with the logistics of that.
I'm going to go back a couple slides. That's right. So our initial allocation of about $3.7 million was an 18-month pilot program. Originally, that was going to align to the setting up of the district as had originally been passed and approved by all of you. Once it became clear that those timelines were no longer going to align and the additional changes at the General Assembly made for a different timetable, an additional allocation of $2.3 million for 12 more months was provided to us, and those will wrap up in June of 2025.
I wish I could find the PDF, because when this whole thing started, she had a whole breakdown of how much downtown Indy was getting. I forgot. It was like a ridiculous amount of money. I thought it was $500,000 in administration fees. And of course, you know, Republicans don't want to email me back of if their downtown Indy is getting administration fees for this whole thing, this whole $4.5 million ordeal.
Thank you. And two more questions, if I may, Madam Chair. I think that the outreach for our homeless population and partnering with Horizon House has been an important part of this initiative from the beginning. Is there any tracking of the folks who have been encountered? Has the outreach resulted in folks getting permanent housing? Has it resulted in anyone getting any treatment or options that has helped them not become homeless. I'm just curious if there's any outcomes we can look to.
I would be happy to share that with you, Counselor. We provide a comprehensive report as part of our of those federal dollars with the city, and we actually, for each of these categories, track not just in this case those that how that outreach occurs, what those connections are, outcomes, at least to the degree that those outreach workers can. We actually do that across all three categories. That includes number of CSA responses, amount of trash that's been picked up, amount of graffiti that has been remediated. We do that across all of these categories, and I'd be happy to share that.
How much bump poop gets cleaned up? You got to take the pressure washer. Hey, you know what? Actually, speaking of though, I was over in downtown yesterday, and I was, where was I? Ohio, I think, in New Jersey. I don't think I was far from Bougie. Yeah, where I did my recon for the homeless people, and I saw some homeless dude like keeled over with his pants off, fucking dropping a deuce right there on the sidewalk. I was like, all right, yeah, you wonder why people are leaving downtown Indy, why nobody wants to live down here. All right.
Get it with you.
Okay, thank you. And I don't know if you'd be able to do this, but from previous discussions we've had on this, just like the whole process of connecting people, especially people who are struggling with mental health or addiction, to community mental health centers, and ensuring that intervention results in some benefit. I know it's hard to track, but that's like an important thing to see how successful we're being. So I appreciate that, and we'll have an ongoing discussion. And then my last question is on landscaping and beautification. Since I'm always looking for more dollars for public art, what does that help me? Is that defined in the state statute? Do you have flexibility? What actually goes into the landscaping and beautification section?
While it has not been, I think, broadly defined, I think what I've heard from the board and what we've heard from stakeholders is really trying to prioritize those basic services first. That I think about it also in terms of the category of supporting business development. There were some conversations about what that could possibly mean at the public hearing. I think we're open to creative conversations around beautification and business development over the 10-year district. But right now, what we've consistently heard from property owners is first things first, and that is, what does it look like on a street corner? What does it feel like on a street corner? How are we addressing those most basic blocking and tackling issues? And that's really where those dollars have been prioritized. It's things like I said, ensuring that a power box is painted over when there's been graffiti. It's ensuring that when there's when a car has gone up on a bed and all of a sudden it's all ripped up, how are we addressing those issues? When a fencing has been all ripped up, how are we addressing those issues? And so that has really been the prioritization of those dollars thus far.
Yeah. Hey, guess what, Barth? Maybe we don't want to have a mural painted of some bullshit artist. All right. We need to worry about the basic. I mean, that's really the whole story right there, is what Taylor just said. This is common sense tactic where we want to make sure that all the basic shit is done. When I'm walking down the street, I don't see bums, I don't see graffiti, I don't see the whole road trashed up, the sidewalk. I don't want to have to walk over a bunch of heroin addicts. Is it really that hard? Nah, spoiler alert, it's not.
Yeah, and I think I 100% agree with you. And this is just a comment for the future. And in my own district in Broad Ripple, there's some exciting news coming about some investment in public art that we think could spur some economic development. So all these things, as you know, are interrelated.
Yeah.
I know you're working hard on all this stuff, so I appreciate it, and thanks for your presentation today.
Thank you.
Yeah. Councilor Ane.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And Ms. Schaefer, thank you for being here and going through this kind of newer concept at the downtown Indianapolis Economic Enhancement District. You know, Madam Chair, I think that Ms. Schaefer had indicated that two members of the district board, Chairman Brown and District Board Member Henneke, are here, and I didn't know if maybe it'd be appropriate to invite them up just for a minute to say hello and maybe share their thoughts on the board and the year ahead. I don't mean to put them on the spot, but the service that they're contributing to our capital city is important, and I think that they would be great to invite up to briefly say hello and share their thoughts.
Absolutely. Gentlemen.
Good evening, and thank you for hearing our case this evening. I'm Bill Brown. I'm the chair of the EED, and we're obviously very pleased that we have the opportunity to not only bring this before you, but also have the opportunity to actually enact what we've been doing for the last year and a half with the ARPA funds. This gives us the opportunity to continue those services and actually expand those services beyond the mile square and into a larger area. Where we really believe that this will make a big difference to the downtown. It already has already, and we know that it's important to our residents as well as to our business owners. And so we continue to see this as a wonderful extension of the work that we've been doing with Downtown Indy, and Taylor and her team have done an excellent job relative to managing the ARPA funds. We're going to be doing the same thing with the funds that are coming to us from the EED. One of the things that we're also going to be doing, and Taylor and I have talked about this a couple of times, we know that there are various parcels that have been accepted out of this and various property owners, and we're actually going to develop a strategy where some of those owners have already expressed interest in contributing when they don't have to contribute, and so we're going to set up a mechanism for those entities to actually contribute additional dollars into the fund, which will be welcomed, obviously. So I'll let Greg offer his thoughts.
Hey, we want to convince you to put more of your hard-earned money in making sure bums aren't taking dumps on streets. Can we do that? Because originally the bill was you were going to be forced to pay this fine, and now there's more of an opt-in for it. I think it's mostly for homes. And maybe renters are on it, but I don't remember entirely. The businesses, obviously, they don't have a choice.
Thoughts as well.
Thanks,
And by the way, I think two of the people that are on the board of the EED work with, or they're on the board of Downtown Indy. Two of the people that were appointed by the governor's office are part of Downtown Indy. Seems like a conflict of interest. I know the council doesn't give a shit, and I definitely know that Downtown Indy doesn't give a shit, but it is worth noting.
Bill, and thanks for having me up here. It's been a while, maybe about 30 years since I was up here a lot, and I do miss it sometimes. But I echo a lot what Bill said. I think Downtown Indy's doing a fantastic job now, and that COVID money was a godsend. I live 2 blocks from here. I've been moved back downtown for almost 20 years now, so it's my neighborhood. I'm just a neighbor at this point, but I was really honored to be asked by the mayor to be on this board, and I really believe in Downtown Indy. I think it's a great place. It's gotten a few black eyes.
Wait, black eyes or black guy? Hey, buddy. Oh, black eyes. Okay. Yeah, well, you want to know why that is? Because of Democrats. That's all you have to do. And I can guarantee you this, that you, with this new, if Natalie Goodwin becomes chair of the GOP, county chair of the GOP, it won't get any better, all right? She's in her $500,000 mansion up on the north side. She doesn't give a shit about us plebs. Our current leadership and the minority leader for the council, he doesn't give a shit. He's more concerned about being a slumlord with his housing properties. We're totally fucked. We are totally on our own, and these are our rulers right now.
And COVID and stuff, and people that aren't down here don't realize what we have. And as our greater Central Indiana community continues to grow outward, it's really still important to have the core be solid, because the rest of it didn't mean anything. So I'm excited to be on this, and I appreciate you guys' consideration.
Thank you. Yeah, Councilor Gibson.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, board members, for being here. Really appreciate you. I have a comment for Taylor. Taylor, I was interested in the CSA app. How long have you been using it? And I assume that you use it across the board in terms of reporting to engage the proper stakeholder, for lack of a better word. Is CSA also connected with other resources like that you mentioned that you partner with as well?
So the way that it works is it's an out-of-the-box solution marketed largely to organizations like ours, place-based management organizations all across the country. It's skinned for Downtown Indy. So you select Downtown Indy as your partner. We rolled it out, I think, initially in 2023, early in 2023, initially just for downtown Indy members, and have continued to scale it up. Obviously, all of the property owners, we want to be able to utilize it and have access to it. It really focuses when you do it. You can report something that is not in one of the categories, but it's really focused on the things that you see here.
All right, here. So Jim Dora and Bill Brown, they are the two of the people appointed, 2 out of the 4 people appointed by the governor that are part of downtown Indy.
Vandalism, it's graffiti, it's trash or environmental issues. It includes public safety and challenges that a business might be experiencing with someone experiencing homelessness around their property. We do have, it has a notification that if it's an emergency, we encourage them to call 911. It's not monitored 24/7. It's not an emergency hotline. But it does allow us to then provide that information to our partners, whether that's IMPD, whether that's our off-duty officers. It allows us to schedule and ensure that our staffing mirrors where we're seeing trends in all sorts of challenges, whether that's, like I said, whether that's environmental or otherwise. And then it also allows for us to share that information with relevant parties that may not be the work that we do on a daily basis, but to be able to pass that along appropriately.
I appreciate that, and it sounds like a good tool to use. I just downloaded it, but it's not for my use, is it?
You are more than welcome. If you're walking around downtown, I have no objection to you reporting
I work for Elements Health Anthem, so I'm down here all the time.
Oh, boy, who would have guessed?
I appreciate that, and I think you're doing a wonderful job. And
you know who else worked for Anthem? Woody Myers, the guy that ran for governor back in 2020.
To continue to work with you as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Gibson. Additional questions? Yes, Leader Hart.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and great questions by the committee. I mean, I was going to ask all those very similar things, but the one I want to dive a little bit deeper into is where Chairman Barth was going with really making sure that when we're expending these funds and we're going down to make Indianapolis safer and cleaner. It sounds like a lot of the federal reporting is quantitative versus you're just saying. Which is a good thing, right? It's good to see and report on those metrics, understand how much trash was picked up, how much graffiti was removed, which is good to see, but that really doesn't state how it improves the quality of Indianapolis. And that's what I'm curious. I mean, you were just at an event that I was at the other day, and Visit Indy is promoting, however record-breaking year we have in 2024, and that's great, and it's going to be hard to break those records, but maybe that's a way that we can look at it, right? And seeing that we're able to attract more people, more events to the city. So I'm curious, the thoughts from you, how can we show that qualitative improvement to Indianapolis in those 2 categories as you come back and talk to this committee and as the board reports to you, because you're now in this middle position of both of these?
Well, everything you just said are conversations that we've been having as a staff, that the board has been having as an oversight entity, and candidly that we've been having as sort of a larger downtown Indy community. One of the things that we began doing last year that we at Downtown Indy are committed to continuing is a user survey. We did it and then announced the results as part of our State of Downtown in September of last year. We plan on doing that and utilizing that.
Surveys are just like polls. They're fake and lame.
Pretty consistently moving forward. We do plan on adding the category of district payer moving forward. We talked quite a bit about it last year, but we felt like that's a complicated answer until you've seen it on your property tax bill and know that you're a part of that district. And so we didn't include that as a standalone category. We plan on tracking that in the future because, to your point, how people feel is nearly as important as what the statistics say, whether that is about amount of trash picked up or, for that matter, amount of public safety issues, right?
This was actually voted on, right? Because Democrats and the rhinos were saying, oh, Joe Biden's economy is wonderful. What are you talking about? But the real people knew, no, eggs are still expensive, milk still expensive, gas expensive, everything else is gone up in price, and you're going to tell me, and this is because of all these GDP bros, and Taylor, I think, is finally starting to figure out, you could put the data on there, but if you have all these extreme things happen in Marion County, or even you go downtown, I go downtown a couple of times a month. I'll be down there tomorrow. What do I smell when I go to the Circle? Urine, Chick-fil-A, and weed. Like, what person is going to feel safe in that kind of environment? And Democrats, and especially Republicans that want to legalize weed, you want to turn the state into California, all right? That's all there is, and you're a piece of shit.
We can talk about what those outcomes are from an IMPD standpoint, and they're incredibly important, but that doesn't, the reason people come downtown isn't that cut and dry, right? It's as much about vibes as it is anything else, and we want to ensure that we're tracking that too. So that was the reason for beginning that public sentiment survey, and we're planning to do that. Like I said, our commitment was over 5 years, although I can't imagine that we'll certainly readdress it after 5 years, but I think that's something we'll do over the life of the district.
This is why people are going to Hamilton County. Hamilton County is spending a lot of taxpayer money, so more economic development can go over there, and then within 20 or 30 years, maybe they'll make their money back. But right now, there is a war between Hamilton County and Marion County, and Hamilton County is currently winning because Rhino Republicans.
That's fantastic, and something I just encourage, as being a business owner in the district, but not a property owner in the district, right? So I'm not going to see that on a bill.
Right.
And I'm sure there's a lot of people in that category.
Undeniably.
And I'm sure they would have a lot of great input. So, when you're figuring out how you do that survey, which I think is a phenomenal idea, getting it to the people that are also, leasees within in that category as well, because I'm sure they have probably a lot better opinion sometimes than the leaseors.
I think, so last time, we really marketed it to users of downtown, right? Those were the categories that were tracked. It was central Indiana residents, it was downtown residents, and it was workers. Like, those were really the three, and students. Those are really the categories that we were pushing those to. I think the evolution will be a more intentional push to include district payers as well, but undeniably the business owners, especially encouraging, to the previous question about CSA, encouraging those property owners to pass that along to the businesses. They're our eyes and ears on a daily basis, right? And so often they're the first one to experience a problem or see an opportunity or need additional resources, probably before it ever trickles down to the person that is actually owning that building.
Absolutely. Well, thank you.
Additional comments? Madam Clerk, if you would like to read the statement.
Thank you. Before we open the floor to public comments, we would like to remind deal with those issues if they come up, but committee member asks for a consent to adopt these rules, we can proceed.
We're not going through that whole thing.
Consent. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak to proposal number 50? See it
I have Kelly Margot.
for proposal 50? Okay. Thank you. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved, Madam Leader.
The motion has been properly moved in second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. The motion carries. The next item on our agenda is proposal number 51, approves amount, locations, and program operations of certain projects to be funded from the Community Development Grant Funds.
Thank you.
What are we doing here, boys? Oh, they're goofing around over here. Good now? Are we good now? Yeah? We hit the on button for the microphone, you know?
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair, and your patience as we figured out some technological difficulties there. So good evening, and thank you all for having me tonight. My name is Beth Neville, and I'm the Administrator of Community Investments with the Department of Metropolitan Development.
Hey, Asher Pass. Oh, for those who know what I'm talking about.
My team who manage the grant programs we'll be discussing tonight. And so Council Proposal 51 is seeking the approval of the amounts, locations, and use of community development grant funds. Before we get into the specifics of Council Proposal 51 and the annual action plan, I wanted to take a step back and give you all some context for what my team does. We are responsible for the grant management and oversight of numerous grant programs related to affordable housing, community development, and homelessness. This includes the grant funding that's part of Council Proposal 51, as well as the Continuum of Care Grant, Local Housing Trust Fund, Section 108, and some COVID-specific response resources as well. The grant programs that we're focusing on tonight are the Home Investments Partnership Program, the Community Development Block Grant, the Emergency Solutions Grant, and the Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS Grant. The amounts for these programs is determined by the amount of funding approved through the federal budget and a formula determined by HUD. So the home program can be used for the creation and rehabilitation of affordable rental and home ownership opportunities. It can also be used for down payment assistance.
This is what your money is going to, by the way. While our roads are all jacked up, while we can't even get residential streets plowed, this is what our money's being spent on.
Rental assistance. And we receive about $4 million a year in home funding. The CDBG program is
there it is, housing opportunities with
source,
people with the old age.
Benefiting low and moderate income individuals and neighborhoods. We primarily use it for affordable rental and home ownership opportunities, homeowner repair, public facilities like community centers, demolition of unsafe structures, and job training for youth and high barrier adults. We typically receive about $9 million annually in CDBG. So home and CDBG are more of the development-focused grants, while ESG and HOPWA are more focused on providing services. So the ESG program can be used to assist households who are experiencing or at risk of homelessness. These funds are primarily used for emergency shelter operations, rapid rehousing, street outreach, and homelessness prevention. This is one of our smaller grants, and we only get about $800,000 a year annually in ESG. Finally, the HOPWA program is unique within our portfolio. The other grants that we have, so those first three, they can only serve households and projects within the city limits of Indianapolis. HOPWA, however, statutorily has a service area that includes the surrounding counties, including Boone, Brown, Hamilton, Hancock, Hendricks, Johnson, Madison, Morgan, Putnam, and Shelby counties. So it has a really large service area. HOPWA funds can be used for rental assistance, mortgage assistance, and other housing stability services for individuals and households who are impacted by an HIV or AIDS diagnosis. And typically we receive about $2 million, sometimes a little bit more in HOPWA every year. It's important to keep in mind that these grant programs come with a variety of complex federal regulations, and they must be carried out on a reimbursement basis. So unlike traditional philanthropic grants, which can often be provided on the front end of a project, our partners must incur an expense and then submit to our team for review and reimbursement. And then finally, again, with the exception of HOPWA, we can only serve the city limits of Indianapolis. So we cannot fund projects in Speedway, Beech Grove, Lawrence, and Southport.
Oh, really?
I've included a few photos of some of the CDBG and home funded projects over the last couple of years. These include affordable home ownership and affordable rental housing through our development partners, but it also includes historic rehabilitation, food access projects, and partnerships with the Parks Department and DPW for pivotal, comprehensive, community development-based infrastructure projects as well. The ESG and HOPWA programs partner with local nonprofits focused on providing high-quality services to our most vulnerable residents. This is not a comprehensive list of all of our partners, but did want to provide some additional context for the types of organizations who carry out this work. I also want to make clear that the proposal before you tonight only includes 4 programs within the full affordable housing spectrum. So there are a variety of other funding programs, some of which are managed by DMD and others are external. So I want to be clear, Council Proposal 51 is just a subset of some of the affordable housing and community development initiatives happening throughout our city. There are projects happening throughout our city that are ARPA funded, low-income housing tax credit funded, TIF funded, that are not included in the proposal before you tonight. So Council Proposal 51 only relates to the 4 grant programs discussed earlier. So when we say affordable housing, for our programs, this refers to households who are at or below 80% of the area median income, or AMI. Currently, for a
Shouldn't it be like how expensive a home is, not how much money you make? I'm just saying, like, oh, it's affordable. Okay, well, what is affordable to you? We're like, well, I want to have a 2,000 square foot home with a pool outside, and other people are like, I'm good with 800 square feet and a working shitter. I mean, what are we even talking about here?
household of 1, someone has to make below $57,650 to qualify for our programs. A family of 4 would need to make less than $82,300. HUD requires that we go through a number of processes in order to be eligible to receive these funds as a city. The first concept to be aware of is our 5-year consolidated plan. We're required to complete this plan every 5 years, and this process involves community engagement to determine our funding priorities over the next 5 years. The second concept is our annual action plan. This serves as an annual update to that 5-year plan and includes projects that will be funded that work towards those goals identified in that 5-year plan. All of the projects that we fund through our annual action plan must meet one of the goals and priorities outlined in the consolidated plan. And then finally, in order to develop that annual action plan, we host a number of competitive funding application rounds. This includes both internal and external non-conflicted review committee members. And through these competitive processes, we determine the projects that will be selected to be part of the annual action plan. So our current consolidated plan, that's that 5-year plan again, is sunsetting, and it ran from 2020 through 2024. We are still within our 2024 program year. Our HUD year is a little bit different from federal fiscal year or from the city's calendar year. It runs through the end of March every single year. So the data on this slide is from our 2020, 2021, 2022, and 2023
Over 1,700 low-income households with the HIV or AIDS
time, we expended a
provided
little over $54
short-term
million
rental.
in total of those 4 grants. And some of those major highlights include creating 93 new affordable home ownership opportunities, 57 affordable rental units were developed or rehabbed, 22 grocers and low-income census tracts were provided technical assistance, nearly 1,800 low-income households with HIV or AIDS were provided short-term rental assistance, over 3,500 adults and 1,700 youth engaged in job training services, 1,422 neighbors experiencing homelessness were engaged through street outreach, 65 new jobs were created for low-income individuals, and nearly 500 households at risk of homelessness were provided rapid rehousing. This is not all-encompassing, but I wanted to give you all a sense of the work we do and the scale with which our partners are able to carry out this work. So we are working on the final steps to finalize our 2025 through 2029 consolidated plan, which will officially kick off in April, and that'll be the start of our 2025 program year. Again, this consolidated plan is the 5-year plan that's required by HUD and sets the vision for the next 5 years. It also serves as our application to HUD to make sure that we can keep receiving these federal grants year over year. So through public hearings, participation in those Road to Resources block parties, surveys, and stakeholder listening sessions, we've identified 4 main priorities for this consolidated plan that's coming up. Overwhelmingly, we heard about the need for affordable housing. So the first priority is supporting the development of quality affordable housing. So this includes developing affordable rental, home ownership, permanent supportive housing, and providing essential home repairs. The next priority is reducing homelessness through shelter, short-term housing, and rental assistance. So that would include overnight shelter, street outreach, rental assistance, and homelessness prevention. Third is supporting basic human needs via public services and public facility improvements. So this is focused on improving access to healthy food, supportive services for those households with an HIV or AIDS diagnosis, and supporting service programs that increase economic mobility. The final priority is on increasing access to employment opportunities and investing in neighborhoods. So this would include job training, support for small businesses and microenterprises, commercial rehab, public facilities, and brownfield remediation and demolition. So those priorities have set the vision for the next 5 years of these funds. So any project that we are going to fund over the next 5 years has to fall within one of those buckets. So those priorities then informed our 2025 action plan, which is what's before you tonight. Our action plan process requires a competitive application process. So for a little bit of context, we combine our home and CDBG applications, which are primarily focused on development. We also host a competitive HOPWA application and a competitive ESG application. So we actually have 3 application rounds every single fall. For home and CDBG, specifically around the affordable housing priorities, we have kind of broken it down into neighborhood factors and project-specific factors. So some of those neighborhood factors include proximity to transit and multimodal transportation, such as greenways, trails, and bike lanes. We also really prioritize areas that don't have any existing affordable housing. Finally, we also prioritize neighborhood amenities, so access to schools, healthcare, and grocery stores. On the project-specific side, we focus on permanent supportive housing units if the project has more units available for lower-income households. So our requirements are 80% AMI, but if this project will target people who are at 50% AMI or 30% AMI, that receives higher priority. We also prioritize a variety of bedroom counts, so we're looking for projects that have especially more bedrooms per unit. So 3 and 4 bedrooms are a big missing piece in our affordable housing portfolio locally. And then finally, we're also factoring in and prioritize projects with sustainability features. For non-housing projects, we prioritize, again, transit access. We're also prioritizing the creation and expansion of retail food options and inclusive growth or barrier busting activities. So those are activities that reduce barriers for low-income households. That could include things like affordable childcare, connection to education, really anything, again, that helps increase economic mobility. So this slide provides a summary of the proposed 2025 action plan budget. In 2025, we're planning on allocating approximately
$2.3 million for housing for people with the AIDS. That is incredible. And then your taxpayer money, by the way, is going to people to own a home or rent a home, while people like me and you have to go the traditional way. It really does not pay. Basically, what Democrats are saying is like, hey, you know what? I know the average hardworking person that wants to get ahead in life, do things the right way, but guess what? We're going to give out $12 million for people with AIDS, for people to rent a home or an apartment, and ownership of a home. So those people get to take the short way. They get to take the shortcuts in life. While people like me and you, we have to struggle. We have to go the normal way because, what about the homeless queens?
$1 million. This includes
man,
from prior years
fuck
and
Democrats.
Our expected 2025 award amounts. So as you can see, the vast majority of the funding is going towards affordable rental and home ownership opportunities, and then we're also planning on 11% going towards admin costs. Here's a little bit more of a visual representation. I know the text is really tiny up there, but the dark blue is the amount of funding going towards affordable housing initiatives at 69%. Then the gray is admin at 11%. About 1% is planned for demolition and brownfield remediation. 4% in red is for job training and youth employment. 8% is in orange for public facilities and infrastructure, again related to comprehensive community development. 6%, which is in yellow, is set aside for our essential homeowner repair program, and 1% is planned for food access and microenterprise assistance. This slide shows the distribution of where we received home and CDBG applications from. So these were development applications that were submitted to us requesting just that home and CDBG funding. This includes both housing and non-housing applications, but not any of the services related to ESG and HOPWA. We received approximately $23 million in application requests, with about $10 million available to award. So our role through this process with DMD is as a non-conflicted funder. DMD staff does not develop programs or development projects through this process because we need to be able to maintain the integrity of our competitive process. We need to remain that neutral third party that responds to the applications that we receive from external groups. So our team is available throughout the year for technical assistance. We host a number of trainings around program policies, our processes, and orientations for new entities applying. These are available in both group settings or individualized meetings. But once our application opens, which is typically late August or early September, we can only answer logistical questions about our applications so that we can ensure that these processes are still competitive. We also have External non-conflicted review committee members participate in the decision-making process. These are typically other funders in the affordable housing and community development space. This slide, I apologize, is a little difficult to read, but this shows the geographic distribution of the projects we're proposing funding through the 2025 action plan. So if you focus first on the colors that are on the map, so that pink, green, and blue, that's what's known as the NRSA, the Neighborhood Revitalization Strategy area. These areas have certain requirements that are defined by a HUD, such as being primarily residential and a certain percentage low income. HUD is particularly interested in tracking outcomes within those geographies, and we have slightly more flexibility with some of the rules and regulations for projects that are located within that NRSA. However, projects outside the NRSA are absolutely eligible, and we do fund projects throughout the city limits of Indianapolis. So if you look at the next layer, the hash marks indicate citywide initiatives. So this includes projects like our Essential Homeowner Repair Program, down payment assistance, job training, and supportive services through ESG and HOPWA. The icons indicate project types such as rental, homeownership, public facility, or infrastructure. And again, we can only serve the city limits of Indianapolis, so that's why Speedway, Beech Grove, Lawrence, and Southport are not part of those hash marks. So in order to meet the federal requirements for the 2025 action plan, we released a draft for public comment on January 15th. That public comment period will end on Valentine's Day, February 14th, and then the regulatory submission date is February 15th. However, we are not allowed to submit our action plan to HUD until the passage of the federal budget, and we actually know the allocation amounts. At this point, it's an estimate based on historical trends. So we will submit our action plan as soon as we are able, which will likely be later in the spring. So with that, I want to thank you all for your time this evening. You can use the QR code on the screen to link to our website, where folks can learn more about our grant programs, see previously recorded trainings, and sign up for our email announcements. Are there any questions from, yes?
Thank you so much for your presentation. Councilor Ane.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just curious, what type of contact does the city maintain with the federal agency, HUD, Housing and Urban Development? Do you wait on HUD to contact the city, or are you in constant communications? Is it emails? Is it phone calls? Obviously, we have a new administration, and obviously, we all see that there are different philosophies as it relates to federal spending. Are there any indications that the federal spending on this particular program may look different than it has in the past?
I sure hope so.
Yeah, so we maintain a really strong relationship with our local HUD office. We have established biweekly meetings with them, but then we also know that they're a quick phone call or email away. So we're very lucky that we have such a great relationship with our local HUD office. At this point in time, we are continuing business as usual, or instructing our partners to do the same. Everything that's before you tonight is statutorily eligible and follows the laws as outlined by these programs. So at this point, we're continuing business as usual.
Thank you. And Madam Chair, I just have one more.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. I believe when you take a look at the map you provided, you'll see down off of Bluff Road an X for public space. I believe that's the BACI, and that's something that's in my council district, and I've been very supportive of the Burmese American Community Institute. I was just curious, when you fund these projects over a long-term period of time, do you ever go back after 5 or 6 years and check back in? Do they take any type of surveys? Because I see where you've shown some statistics, and I think as Councilor Hart noted, those tell one story, but I was just curious if we're able to tell a longer story over a longer period of time.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So I think historically, we've mostly tracked with the 5-year required period of time, but absolutely open and love those kinds of stories about qualitative outcomes as well, which sometimes are a little bit more difficult to track when it comes to community development. But yes, that's one of the things that I know DMD is really interested in, and telling those stories of our community-based partners who do this difficult work day in, day out.
Yeah, and I think the stories that we hear in the short term, say over 5 years, they're really good, but if there are opportunities to go back over, longer periods of time, I think it just helps even greater talk about the stories. We don't always see these type of grants on the south side in my district. We're very proud of this one, and we'd love to be able to tell that story over a longer period of time.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Additional questions? Councilor Delaney.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to get very specific and kind of drilling into something that Councilor Anay talked about. The president has stated that he wants to cut federal funding and money flowing to local government. So I want to make sure we're like super clear what we're talking about. Or do you anticipate any loss of funds because of what the president's actions are?
At this point in time, we, like I said, are continuing business as usual. The CDBG program's been around for 50 years. It was around for prior administrations of this presidency. And so, you know, we don't know what we don't know, but at this point, we believe we will continue to receive these funds. Especially prior year funds have already been approved by Congress, and so we're continuing on business as usual. And these are funds that are used in both red and blue states throughout the country.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just want to dig into something, a couple things here. The first one on the applicant pool that we're seeing. And we had a conversation last week about this, but I just found it really important. And, you know, a lot of times, historically, we had a counselor who was on this committee, and she would call this out, and I guess I'm doing this in her namesake. But it's
I'm
really
guessing it's
seeing a
Lakeisha
broader
Jackson.
use of these tools throughout the county, not necessarily just, a lot of times we see it centralized in the center of the county, right, in the Indianapolis area. And, I mean, there's a great story that we're seeing at Perry Township this time around. But from what I've learned over the years of seeing these grants, it's not necessarily a lack of, you know, administering dollars out to that. It's the applicants that are coming into the program. And they're not necessarily coming from south side, east side, west side, north side. So with that being the case, I'm curious, in this current package that we're looking at approving, how many new applicants are there?
That is a great question. Do you mean applicants or the ones that have been awarded? Awarded. So if I were to quick back the napkin, and it also depends, we've had one of the ways that we've developed partnerships over time and helped build the capacity of a lot of smaller grassroots organizations is that we perhaps fund them through a services contract, which is a little bit easier than diving into a complex development project. So I think Burmese American Community Institute is a great example of that, where for the last couple of years, they've been one of our Summer Youth Program Fund recipients, which is a much smaller allocation. They get used to the requirements of federal funding, and now they've transitioned into a development project. So I think that's one that kind of toes that line between they're not necessarily technically new, but for our development projects, they are new. Another new one, Hope CDC is relatively new as well. They were involved on the Lift Indy Far East side, and through a lot of the partnerships developed through that program are now to the point where they are interested in, willing, and able to take on a development project. Equity 1821 is another new program for the federal grant dollars, as well as Midwest Support Foundation, the King Avenue Homes. That's a new developer for us. Let me see. Shepherd CDC, they're partnering with a developer who has worked over the number of years, but Shepherd CDC is a new organization for us to fund.
Okay, that's good. That's good. I don't want to.
This is interesting. The Equity 1821, the first Black-led custom-designed loan fund, launched with a $1 million investment from the American Rescue Plan. Oh, this is funny. Yeah. All right, this is from the recorder. The new CDFI was created after the City of Indianapolis and the Local Initiative Support Corporation commissioned a study to develop the fund. Black Onyx Management Group conducted a study and served as a consultant. Okay, so 1821 got money from the taxpayers, and then they gave that money to Black Onyx Management. And this is what happens every time. This is how Homeless Inc. works. This is how all these this is why you spend so much money on something and nothing ever happens. Is all this money is spent on consulting fees to other people, and that's how the laundering happens every single time. We just proved it here in real time. And this is why nonprofits are a scam. I've been saying it for a long time. They should be totally non-tax exempted because they're crummy ways for people, very rich people, to make even more money. And we saw it with downtown Indy, we saw Taylor Schaefer making 220 grand, and all you people who are going to bitch about mom market, all right, then just make it private then. Don't make it a nonprofit anymore. It's literally that simple. But you want to because you're tax exempt. So whatever, I don't care. It's just more bullshit, but you're gonna keep believing it anyway.
We can go through the whole list. But I just find it interesting because I tried to help a developer over the summer as much as I could. Right, I directed him to your office, and I'm not an expert in these things by any means, but he was telling me about a project that he had, and again we talked about this, and it happened to be in Councilor Gibson's district, I believe, and then another one in Councilor Jones's. But it sounds like some of the challenges that he had is that he tried to apply for these grants, but it wasn't anything wrong with the project. It was there's only so much they know about applying for these, and then it's almost as if it's not almost it is as if you apply and then you learn what you did wrong after the fact, versus having a very clear-cut way of applying for the funds, which makes it difficult for really getting new admissions and approvals into these programs. So,
well, we can tell that this taxpayer money, Michael Paul Hart. I know you're a GDP bro, and you kind of don't care about us wasting money, even though you're supposed to be fiscally conservative and all, or pragmatic, as you have said many times. But it should actually be harder to get a grant. It should be harder for people to get my money, your money, everybody on that council's money. If you want to give your money away, you are free to do so. But my taxpayer money should be going to fixing the roads first. Hey, Michael Paul Hart, since you have been silent on everything that's been going on with this whole snowplow program, can I at least get like the residential streets plowed before we give money to be wasted on these nonprofits? Thanks, bro.
That to me is an opportunity for the city of Indianapolis. And,
no, you're wrong.
I think there's more we could do on that behalf
you're
for
wrong.
some of the developers that have these projects that could qualify, but
no,
they're
you're
losing
wrong
out because they didn't know how to fill out a form properly.
Womp womp.
The other thing I want to dive into is just asking a question and how this could relate to student housing, because I'm looking at the affordability matrix, and it really shows a pretty broad number for one individual. I think it was like 57,650 for one household member. That's going to be a lot of students would fall into that category. So if somebody's developing student housing, would they qualify for these types of funds?
No, HUD has a lot of very specific rules around students. So it can be sometimes project specific, but most often, if you are still dependent on a tax return, you are not eligible, and we are not allowed to do student housing traditionally now.
Okay, that's good to know. And then demolition restrictions, is this only for housing, or does this include commercial properties as well?
Commercial properties are also eligible for demolition through CDBG.
Okay, now I'll ask you this one. I'll go into details later on that offline. The last one would then be, I saw IU Bloomington Health on this distribution list. How does that, and I know you mentioned early on that there were some of these dollars that could be distributed to outside of Marion County. I would have to hope that there's a correlation between IU Health and Indianapolis with those dollars.
So IU Health Bloomington, that is a HOPWA recipient, so that's the one that has that huge service area that goes not only to donut counties, but all the way down to Bloomington. And so we are statutorily required to serve all of those counties, and IU Bloomington has been our longstanding partner through that.
Interesting.
That may be another conversation for a different day.
Yeah.
Mr. Leader.
Yeah, do you see the wheels starting to turn on it like, interesting. I mean, not that Michael Paul Hart cares that much anyway, because he has no problem wasting taxpayer dollars.
Because I think it does get a little complicated on that piece.
Yeah, we're going right into the weeds, baby.
Additional questions, comments?
And, look how fast Maggie Lewis was like, yeah, we need to stop this conversation immediately. Well, probably because it's just been over an hour. Most of these people don't want to be there for any more than an hour. And Maggie Lewis may or may not be trying to hide something.
Counselors. Madam Clerk, you have a list.
Kelly Margot.
Marco!
Next.
Emily Hillebrand. Joe Bowling.
I saw Joe.
Madam Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
Jenny Foltz, Deputy Director for the Department of Metropolitan Development. These folks had signed in to testify in support of proposal number 51, but had since left, so I apologize
No,
for
no worries.
that.
Thank you. I thought I saw him. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak to proposal number 51?
More Aaron Laster.
Oh, I apologize.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Aaron Laster, and I currently serve as the Director of Acquisitions and Development for the Midwest Support Foundation. Our organization has been engaged in affordable housing development for over 2 decades, particularly in the low-income housing tax credit development space. And we remain committed to ensuring the quality of stable housing and accessibility to those who need it the most. On a personal level, I've been invested in the Hallville neighborhood since college, about 9 years ago.
Whoville.
And I've seen firsthand both the challenges and the potential of the neighborhood.
Dude, Hallville is a shithole. Okay. The potential. People have been saying that for years. All right, but go for it. You know what? Go for it, King.
Awarded home funds for phase 1 of a home ownership project, which Beth had mentioned earlier. And Hallville is a neighborhood that has been overlooked for several years, but I believe it deserves the same investment and opportunity as many other parts of the neighborhood of the city. And lastly, I would like to express my strong support for the proposal presented to you today. Projects like this are not just about housing. They're about equity, stability, and creating a pathway to generational wealth for families. I appreciate the city's commitment to equitable development, and I encourage the committee to support this effort. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Madam Clerk, does that conclude your list? Is there anyone else in the audience that wishes to speak to proposal number 51? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion. Is there a second? Motion been properly moved in second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed, same sign. The motion carries. Thank you so much for your presentation. Seeing no other business before this committee, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment. We are adjourned.
There we go. There we go. Everybody gets to leave now. Well, that was fun, huh? Our money's being spent on cleaning up bump poop. It's spent on housing people that have the AIDS and corruptible or corrupt nonprofits. What a surprise, huh? What a surprise. Well, that'll do it for me. Until next time.